Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk to you about the best index ETFs in Canada in 2021, at least in my own personal opinion. Let's get down and let's check out the first one. Okay, so the first index ETF that I really like is the BMO S&P 500 index ETF. The ticker is ZSP. The yield is a bit low when it comes to ETF or at least dividend investing that I like to do, but when it comes to its growth, it's actually pretty nice. Now, really quickly, its 52-week range is between $35 and $55, and currently sitting at the time of making this video, $54-ish. Its average volume is around 300,000 shares traded per day, which is liquid enough to be able to get in and out if you wanted to do a couple of daily or weekly trades with it. But I always suggest to go as long as possible with index ETFs. Now, this one does pay a quarterly dividend. It's not like a few that do pay every month. And of course, we can see the growth is, it's a very nice straight line all the way up, which is fantastic. This is what we want to see. From there, if you were to grab this about 5 years ago, you would be sitting somewhere in that $30-ish range. Today, it's worth 54, so that's a pretty good improvement, especially when you're looking at dividends getting paid out every single quarter. And don't worry about those missing parts right there. That is just a glitch with Yahoo. Its top holdings, well, at least its top 10 holdings, is 27.75% of its total assets. And its top holdings is Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Alphabet, which is Google. And of course, that's all tech stocks. And the reason why is because tech stocks have pretty much taken over the market. I know there's been some comments talking about how index funds suck because they only have tech. Well, that's not necessarily true, but it's because it's an index fund. It holds all of the companies, or at least the top whatever companies on the stock market at the exact same percentage as to what they are on the stock market, and that just so happens to be pretty much all tech. So keep that in mind. Johnson & Johnson is a great medical company, especially when you're talking about COVID vaccines. Then there's Berkshire Hathaway, which essentially does investing as well, and some of their top holdings is also Apple. And then there's Procter & Gamble and Visa. Visa's interesting because there's been quite a few advertisements about Visa getting into the crypto space with Crypto.com. Another great index is the BMO Covered Call US Bank. Now, this is not an index what's going to cover the whole entire market. It is an ETF that covers just the US banks and plays the covered call strategy, which can get you higher dividends. And because BMO does their call options out of the money, that means that there is actually some pretty solid growth that can come from their covered call ETFs. And I've done a couple of videos on their covered calls, so I'm not going to get into specifics about that in this video. Now, as you can see, the yield, if you're looking for some massive monthly payments, this is fantastic. 8.5%. When I was grabbing this thing up, it was back when, of course, the COVID recession was happening, and well, technically that's still happening, I guess, but I was grabbing this at 10% dividends, and it was fantastic, and I will probably never sell it. From there, the volume is also extremely high. You're looking at 35,000 average shares per day traded, which is fantastic. If you want to get in and out, you can very easily. And the chart looks phenomenal. Like we've seen from the start, it's not a very old ETF. To the top before the coronavirus hit, it had a pretty good jump. And actually, it's quite interesting. You see this in this ETF, and you see it in index funds as well. There was actually, from about December down to May, or March, that would be March, there was a little bit of a decline. Now, everyone has their own little thesis behind this, but I'm going to say that's because there was actually news coming out about coronavirus over here in December. And nobody listened to those weird conspiracy theory websites. Yet I do, and I was starting to sell a few of my shares of things right about here as well. And I was buying this ETF in this range specifically right here. I was buying this ETF. The top holdings are right here, about 67% of their top 10 holdings. And as we know, some of the bigger, gigantic names in this space are SVB Financial, as well as Ameriprise, I think I said that right, as well as JP Morgan, Bank of America, KeyCorp, some of the bigger names, Citigroup, that we pretty much hear about all throughout the entire world. So at least you're getting some pretty solid companies to hold for the long term that can play the covered call strategy. They don't usually move like this. They usually move more like this or like this, which means that the covered call strategy will work extremely well with these companies. They don't usually travel like this, like they have over the past week or so. They generally travel like this, just a slight movement up, which is essentially the best for a covered call strategy. You generally want to be going with a slight movement up, and you will be doing extremely well, at least with the BMO covered call ETFs. Now, Vanguard has a Canadian High Dividend Yield ETF, VDY. This one is one of my favorite. It covers all of the high dividend paying stocks in Canada. It pays 4.6% when it comes to its yield for the quarterly dividend. Actually, for Vanguard, this one, it's actually a monthly dividend. And of course, it trades at 75,000 average shares traded per day, which is absolutely fantastic as well. All of the covered call strategies will be in that 0.8% roughly range for the MER. However, for this ETF, we're looking at an MER of 0.2. And since we're talking MERs, the BMO at the beginning of ZSP is 0.08%. Going back to Vanguard now, if we look at the max chart, we can see that the Canadian market did extremely well until 2016, and between 15 and 16 did not do so well. And then we seen another explosion going into, of course, the coronavirus, where it just absolutely tanked, and now it's come back to about its range where it was before coronavirus. Will this continue? Well, this was a fantastic buying opportunity, and so was this. But will this continue? I think that it could. Oil is going back up into price. Oil was not doing so well there. And of course, when oil does well, Canada generally does well. So that means that I think that this would be a fantastic hold for the long term. When it comes to that Vanguard ETF, of course, the top two companies are banks. And as of today or the other day, Royal Bank has become Canada's largest company on the TSX. Then there's a couple of pipeline companies, as well as going back to the banks. Banks and pipelines and oil generally run the Canadian economy. Then there's an insurance company, BCE, which I have my own thoughts about BCE myself. I don't think that it's going to last at least do very well for the next 15 to 20 years with SpaceX coming in with their internet. But overall, a great top 10 holdings. And then going back to BMO, they have a BMO Canadian Dividend ETF, again holding the dividend paying companies in Canada. This one pays 4.7%, and the MER is a bit higher than Vanguard, so I would personally say that Vanguard has the edge here. Has high trading volume as well for Canadian ETFs. This one's nice because, of course, you're grabbing it right roughly around the level of support, as we can see here as well as here. This would be good for a long-term hold. I wouldn't really back up the truck and load up on it. However, because of course we have seen some massive downturns a few times with this, as well as any Canadian holding when it comes to dividend, you always want to buy dividend paying stocks in Canada whenever the economy is hurting, because of course when they recover, you're going to do extremely well. Top 10 holdings on this one is, of course, we have Sun Life Financial, which is, of course, more of an insurance company up here, at least in my mind. Power Corporation of Canada, CIBC, Manulife, which is insurance, Bank, and then BCE and Nutrien again. So these are my top 10 my top best picks for basically index ETFs up here in Canada. I hope that you've enjoyed. If you have, hit that like button and subscribe. Leave your comments below with what you think are the best, and I will see you guys again next time.